All right, now, welcome to another episode of Kings Speak. I'm your host, Percy King. I'm an attorney in the NBA. This episode is going to be entitled, He Can't Do That, or They Can't Do That. All right, now, specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about all the things, or at least some of the things, that people keep saying that current president, President Trump, can't do. The number of people who've told me he can't do that, well, or they'll ask, well, can he do that? But I know he can't do that. That's like the wrong thing to actually say. How do you say that somebody can't do something that they've already done? How do you say that somebody can't do something that they're continuing to do again and again? The more accurate way of actually assessing that the situation is that, well, based upon the law as you know it, or that you understand it, or that you've heard people say on TV, he can't do that. And even maybe based upon what other presidents have said that they could do, other people have said that they can do, other politicians have said that politicians can do, and things that politicians just didn't do. All right. So you have, on one hand, something that we all have believed, or most people have believed, that you can't do. Like some of the acts that he's just unilaterally doing, appointing people who have no business being in positions, like Elon Musk, at least what many people believe that he shouldn't be, determining that, people can have clearances that they really should not have, especially being that they have backgrounds, whereas if they were in other jobs, if they were trying to get a job at a contractor, government contractor, they wouldn't be able to get the clearance. But one of the main things that's going on now is, the fact that, he is mobilizing the forces of the different states, their guard, and he's utilizing them as if he actually has the authority to do so. He has authority to do so until somebody tells him that he can't. So when you look at something, especially when it comes to a president, what you look at when you're saying he can't do that, you have to look at one, okay, says who? Who says he can't do it? And is that person or people going to actually step in and do anything about it? Is there some type of law, statute, something within the Constitution that keeps them from doing it? And whether or not the court's going to actually do something about it, or who even has the right to step in and try to stop him from doing it? Okay. And you need to look at all those things and then determine whether they're going to do it. And even after the fact, after they say no, whether he's still going to keep doing it anyway, because I've explained before, one of the issues that we have is the case where right before he got in office, the Supreme Court basically explained that as long as the president is acting within one of their presidential powers, they have basically broad ability to not actually be charged with anything, for the most part, immunity. And then when they're acting on, something that is on, shall we say, the curtilage of their power, they still may have immunity. And then they also explain that the presidential power to pardon is really expansive, such that Trump believes that he can pardon himself. And because the way the law works, unless the law specifically states you cannot necessarily do something, when a power is that broad, you can do it. So, it would be hard pressed to get a court to say that he can't. Now, we're operating, at least most people are operating based upon no president ever having done most of these things. But that doesn't make any difference when you have somebody who's willing to do these things and just doesn't give a damn what you think about it. One of the reasons why a lot of these things never happened before is because presidents were worried about their party. They were worried about, what it was going to do to the party, the future of the party. They were also worried about themselves, their own future, and what people would think of them. This man doesn't give a damn about what you think of him, because this allows him to operate the way that he wants to operate and do the things that he wants to do. And people are just going to have to really understand that and operate based upon that. Now, another thing is that when you have somebody who truly, doesn't care, and you have the law basically being the court explaining that, yeah, even if, he does something he's not supposed to do, then he's immune from a prosecution. And then even if you do prosecute him, he can just pardon himself, notwithstanding whether you believe that he should or that he can or not. We don't have case law or anything specific in a law that says that he cannot. Just because other presidents didn't operate that way, there's going to have to be some changes and some specifics either added to the Constitution, or the court is going to have to act and say that these things can happen and outline a process that where something can happen quickly if something like this ever happens again. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about, the troops, being deployed in, several cities, and including, Chicago and LA, and, the fact that he's taken over the troops. And you're going to hear this term, posse comitatus, right? Now, what that means is the power of the county. And basically what that is the power of the municipality, the county, to basically enlist troops in order to, handle certain types of disturbances. All right. And so that means that although it's not necessarily the county that's doing it, it's the county that would be asking the governor of the state to actually do that. But there's only specific, times that they can do that. And for the most part, it's up to the governor to, control those troops. Now, for the president to control those troops, there's limitations. There actually is a little bit of case law, when it comes to this thing, as to, whether or not, this can happen. Now, the case law, at least initially, was limited to the Army and the Air Force. Okay. However, there's been extensions now to the Marine Corps, Coast Guard. They're exempt in peacetime under the Homeland Security. Okay. But the Space Force is part of actually the Air Force. So the Navy and Marines, they also are part of this inability for the president to just take over those things. It has to be one of a few things that actually has to be happening for this to be something that the president can do. There has to be insurrection. Okay, national emergencies and drug interdictions. Okay, so those are the exceptions. Now, there may be a few more exceptions, but those are the most notable ones. And for the most part, most people believe that none of those apply. But herein lies the problem. The problem is that the one that comes close to really applying, national emergencies. Now, however, for the most part, that's something that Congress or statute actually had to approve. But when it comes to this, there's been a little bit of case law that basically explains that he could use them for some logistic things and some training and things of that sort, but not necessarily for really direct stuff. But the problem is that the more people, get up in arms and destroy things, the closer it becomes to a insurrection. Now, the insurrection includes domestic violence or rebellion. All right. So because of that, the more rebellious people get, the closer it becomes to him being able to actually utilize his power to take over the National Guard from the governors. So the worse people act, the closer it gets. Now, we saw that, a sitting United States District Court judge had issued an order, and within a few hours, the Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit said, nah, we really need to look at that. I pretty much knew that was going to happen, and I knew that, he was going to have the Department of Justice to, file something so that the Court of Appeals could actually look at it. And even if they didn't file anything, it's kind of one of those things. You kind of knew that something was going to happen because they really didn't want, this big of a decision to be done by just a district court judge. Now, I'm not saying that the district court judge is small or anything like that. I'm just saying that something of this magnitude, the Court of Appeals really needed to actually hear this, so therefore it would have much more authority behind it, and then it would be able to go directly to the U.S. Supreme Court from there. So that's why they are looking at it to see if they really need to take more time to determine whether or not this falls into one of the categories that would even allow him to do it without Congress, the authority of Congress. As of right now, he doesn't have Congress behind him with this. It may change. It depends on, what happens. If people are doing more, if they're actually, acting up a little bit more, it may be a little different. But as of right now, again, it's one of those things where people are saying, oh, well, he's not supposed to do this. He can't do this. No, one of the things that he recognized in coming into this new presidency is that he can do whatever he wants to do until somebody actively stops him. And the fact that the court largely, the newer ones appointed by him, he feels safe and, not being stopped from doing things. And even if he is, provided an order that says, no, you can't do it, he can just ignore it. I'm not saying that he will, but it seems as though he has ignored some orders already, and, get ready for more of that to happen and for, people to be upset because He's doing whatever he wants to do, and understand that saying that he can't do something doesn't mean very much. It's just not going to mean very much. And, folks got to, understand that that's just the case now. That's the world that we're living in. So again, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and, tell other people about it and share. And I look forward to speaking with you all soon. Have a great night.